Dajte meni prednost kao koleginici. Hvala.
Can I take precedence as a lady colleague?
Hvala vam na...
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'm a national of a country which the International Court of Justice found to be responsible for failing to prevent the genocide in Srebrenica. But I'm also a national of the country whose president made a public apology to the victims of Srebrenica, which I think is an ethical thing to do. I'm also a citizen of a country which is in the process of adopting a resolution on Srebrenica. I'm aware of polls which show that a large number of citizens of Serbia are dissatisfied both with the results of the work of the Tribunal in The Hague and the domestic judiciary alike. Unfortunately, these reactionary forces in our country are still very strong. But let me come back to the topic discussed at one of yesterday's panels, which tackled the issue in which way organizations can help the countries in the region. And one of the panelists mentioned the media. In any case, I believe that in addition to the representatives of the regional authorities, including myself, who must, on every occasion, everywhere, at every opportunity, attempt to explain the truth to the people. I also believe that not only ICTY trials are important, but also domestic trials. I don't have any doubts about the ability of our domestic judiciary, who are very qualified. But when you are trying people in our country, you try them in the language which is acceptable to our citizens. If the journalists who are following these trials do not understand that language, they have to make inquiries and follow-up reporting in the media. And the media themselves are very biased and have their own opinions of what is going on in the ICTY. And the citizens, not only of Serbia, but all of the countries in the region, have to understand that these trials serve one purpose: to establish the truth. And it is through these trials that I believe we will ultimately be able to explain what exactly had happened.
International conflict or being internal conflict, societies change their attitude towards war crimes. There are times when war crimes are committed. There are times where they are selectively prosecuted. You're interested in proving crimes of the other side. And hopefully, in some countries, there are times where societies reach the phase when they are ready to face all crimes and to treat them equally. In Croatia, I can say that ICTY was instrumental in moving us from phase 2 to phase 3. When I try to remember, and it was one of our NGOs representative reminding us of times in 1993 when it was head of Supreme Court, and he was far from being the only one saying that Croatia was a victim of aggression and that therefore Croats could not have made any war crimes. And people really believe that. Now, when I'm listening today to Chief Prosecutor and to President of Supreme Court, who are being very frank, saying that there were times when Croatian legal standards applied to war crimes were not the same as they are today. and that we are willing to admit our mistakes, that we are willing to give a chance to rehear trials in absentia, for which there are grounds to believe that they were not objective. I see moving forward. And in that respect, of course, it was ICTY that was important, but it was certainly not ICTY as the only factor. I also share the view of my colleague from Belgrade that it was very important to have also domestic war crimes trials. For example, I remember, I would say, for psychological shift in Croatia, crucial trial against a young, very popular general who was considered to be very important for the defense of the country, General Norac. And when the trial against him started, we had 100,000 persons protesting against that process. At the end of the process, when he was proven guilty, and when he himself admitted the guilt, there were no protests. Yeah. People realized that war crimes are war crimes, and everybody who commits them should be prosecuted. Now, to be more precise about your question, who are stakeholders of this transformation, of this change? We are not alone. Ministries of Justice are not alone. We have academic community, we have non-governmental organizations, we have media. And I think in Croatia it was a synergy that has made a shift, that has made a change. If you would ask me, do all people in Croatia now think that all war crimes should be treated equally? My answer would be not. But does greatest majority think so? My answer would be yes.
Yeah. And a follow-up for both of you, because I don't want to leave this stone untouched, if you will. We've heard about the synergy, which I think we would all agree with, but more precisely, the role of political leadership. I take the point in both of your interventions that ministers or governments are not solitary figures. There are many other actors. But in the dynamic of the closure of the ICTY, which is coming, and the transfer of responsibility to your jurisdictions, what do you see as the particular responsibility and role for political leaders such as yourself and your governmental colleagues? Please.
Ja moram ipak razdvojiti vaše pitanje na...
I really have to divide your question and answer it in two parts. It's indispensable because you ask me about the role of the political leadership and you ask me about the closure of the ICTY and the transfer of cases to domestic courts. There must be no political intervention there whatsoever. That's why I said that our courts, I mean courts in Serbia, but I don't doubt it will be the same for Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's why I said that our courts are completely ready and qualified to deal with war crimes. There must be no political influence. And it was not an accident that I mentioned at the very beginning of my contribution that Serbia is now in the process of adopting a declaration of Srebrenica. I believe everyone here knows that there was a lot of hesitation, although certainly not on the part of the judiciary or the political leadership, which is evident from the conduct of our president and our government and everyone, and our legislative bodies. And I agree with Mr. Simonovic that NGOs are also very important. But there was hesitation and wavering, and that's why, again, I say the most important thing is to bring the truth to the people.
For creating social climate. And in this respect, I think responsibility of politicians was much greater in Croatia a couple of years ago. when there was still majority of population having many doubts about ICTY, having doubts about national prosecution for war crimes. It's much easier now in Croatia because now you are not gaining votes, but you are losing votes if you are opposing to ICTY and if you are opposing to impartial processes before the law. What I would like to emphasize is that we, when speaking about what ICTY has contributed, there are visible and invisible elements. Okay. I mean, we were addressing some visible elements that we now do have better witness and victim support, that we have better electronic communication and conferences. However, I would say that crucial legacy is the invisible one, the one that has contributed to the establishment of rule of law in sense of treating all cases equally.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do want to call on Minister Arnott, so please, sir. Yes.
Hvala lijepo.
Thank you very much. I should like to say that over the past 2 days, most of the discussions and most of the speakers were from Bosnia and Herzegovina, because most of the things happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and certainly one of the greatest contributions of the ICTY is the organization of the judiciary in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Recent panelists have shared with us some statistics. We were told that there were about 1,100 cases in Croatia. I can tell you that in Bosnia and Herzegovina we have 1,500 cases with known perpetrators and 1,700 with unknown perpetrators. And we have 10,000 cases where we have only suspects. And we have to say what a horrible pressure it is exerting on our judiciary and the public conscience. What I would like to emphasize as a particular achievement of the ICTY is that we have no more quarrel with neighboring countries as to whether every war crime should be prosecuted, every violation of the international humanitarian law. Of course they must. When we took stock of the sheer number of cases, we realized we have a very serious job as a state, and we certainly have to prosecute the first largest batch of the cases in the following 7 years and take care of the rest within the next 15 years. And I believe in the 4 neighboring countries, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, and Republika Srpska as well, there is no more dilemma as to whether trials are necessary. The only remaining dilemma, in view of the fact that 2 fugitives are still on the run, is whether the tribunal has really completed its job. But we can talk about the legacy of the tribunal and what still remains to be done through no fault of the tribunal, and whether perhaps there are some unsatisfied expectations.
Yeah, let's come to you, Minister, State Minister Bulac, in terms of your comments.